This is a description of the Saxon estate of Leverton sometime in the Anglo-Saxon period. It comes from a Saxon boundary charter, Sawyer number S1020, and you can look that up yourself. It describes lands of 9 mansa, probably equivalent to hides, I think, next to the river Cunete. And if you follow any of my videos, you'll know the Cunetan is Old English for the River Kennet. The charter doesn't say Leverton. So how do they know this charter belongs here? Saxon charters, Saxon boundary charters, go in a great big circle describing landmarks that set out the borders of a piece of land that everybody understands, well, at the time would have understood. And everybody's clear what belongs this side of the boundary and what belongs to other people. This is before the days of maps. This is quite a short charter, and many of the landmarks are easily solved in modern times. So, for example, we've talked about the Cunete. The charter starts on the Cunetan. It goes up the Cunetan. It describes something called a Hudene, which means the hid dene. There is a couple of ways of translating that. Anyway, it then goes on to the Lamborn Inga Yemera, which is the Yemera's boundary. Lamberninga means the people of Lamborn, and we can identify that. It is obviously on the north boundary of Leverton. There's nothing to say that boundaries couldn't have changed over 1,000 years, but they do tend to say round about the same or similar to the parish boundaries 100 years ago. So we know where the Lamborn boundary is. We know where the Kennet is. We know where the Hudene, where that was, because there's 2 farms called Hidden Farm, both either side of the Dene that we're talking about. A Dene is a valley. Anyway, there's another Anglo-Saxon boundary which isn't identifiable on the modern map, follows that, and then goes to back to the Kennet. I'm going to stick my neck out a little bit, in the sense that we have a village called Avington, which is just over that border. Now, what's problematic about that is the missing L. So, Ælfwigestone is the boundary of Ælfwig, and so Avington, its oldest recorded names in documents is Aventona and Aventona. So nobody thinks it's Ælfwigestone. But I'm wondering whether or not anybody knew about that boundary on that edge, buried deep in that charter. Not everybody looks at Saxon charters, boundary charters. What I'm wondering is, could that L, that missing L before the V, which is very important, could it have been lost naturally in sound change over the years or not? So I had a look at some other place names in Ekwall, in his place names book, and there's looking at all the other Aver places, Aving places, and there's 2 places called Aveley, both of which have lost the L before the V. There's Aveley in Essex, Aveley Hall in Suffolk, which means it is possible that, and the name, those places belong to people called Ælfwigestone and tell you. Belonged to Ælfwig, a woman called Ælfwig, and the other one belonged to Ælfwig, another woman. So we've got, in this discussion we're having today, we've got 4 women who have owned these big estates, which is an interesting idea, because even in the 19th century, very little property belonged to women. So that's in the modern period, very close to us. It's probably until like the 1930s, something like that, when women start to own their own property. But here, in the anglo-saxon period, we have 4 women in the discussion of, just a few places, which is interesting. It should be interesting. Hopefully, it's interesting to you. But Ælfwig and Ælfwig both are names that begin with Alf, and so does Ælfwig, which means that both those place names lost the L before the V naturally. So it is possible that Avington could have done so too. It's doubtful, which is probably why we haven't seen any discussion in both Ekwall or the English Place Name Society website. But if they didn't know about the boundary clause in the neighbouring parish, I think that lifts the possibility up quite a bit. There is also a landmark near the beginning, well, very close to the beginning, where it talks about Ælfwig's cot. And we know that Eddington, which is right next to Leverton, it used to be called Leverton in the 1100s, I believe, which is derived from Ælfwigestone, the town, the estate of Ælfwig. What is interesting is that Eddington and Leverton were both named after women. So Ælfwigestone, which is the estate of Ælfwig, and Ælfwig's, the estate of Ælfwig. And you're seeing case endings in action. So that would have been the genitive case of Ælfwig, would be Ælfwig. Anyway, so we've got lots of, we can identify all of these places are within spitting distance of Leverton, so we know we're in the right area.